Imagine buying a horse for $1 at a slaughter auction. A horse so broken, so neglected, that no one else wanted her. Now imagine that same horse, 5 years later, winning championship titles, being valued at over $1 million, and inspiring thousands of people around the world. This isn't a Disney movie. This is the real story of Penny, the $1 horse who defied every odd, and Sarah Chen, the woman who saw potential where everyone else saw only worthlessness. This is a story about second chances, unwavering belief, and the incredible bond between a human and a horse that changed both their lives forever. Sarah Chen was 28 years old when our story begins in 2017. She was a petite woman, standing just 5'2", with long straight black hair usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, almond-shaped dark brown eyes that showed both determination and kindness, and a slim but surprisingly strong build from years of physical work. Her heart-shaped face had high cheekbones, a small nose, and a warm smile that put people at ease, though lately she hadn't had much to smile about. Sarah had grown up around horses. Her immigrant parents had worked at a horse ranch in Kentucky, and she'd learned to ride before she could read. She'd dreamed of competing professionally, but life had other plans. Her father died when she was 19, forcing her to drop out of college to help support her family. For nearly a decade, she'd worked 3 jobs: waitressing, stable handwork, and weekend riding lessons for kids. Her own dreams of competition seemed impossibly far away. She lived in a tiny apartment, drove a 15-year-old Toyota, and her bank account rarely had more than a few $100s. But Sarah had one thing money couldn't buy: an eye for horses. One cold Saturday morning in March, Sarah's friend Jessica practically dragged her to a livestock auction in rural Pennsylvania. Jessica Martinez was in her early 30s, with curly brown hair, a round friendly face with dimples, green eyes, a curvy sturdy build, and the kind of boundless optimism that Sarah usually found exhausting. "Come on, it'll be interesting," Jessica insisted. "I've never seen one of these." Sarah had. She knew what these auctions really were: places where horses too old, too injured, or too unwanted ended up. Many would be bought by kill buyers and shipped to slaughterhouses in Canada or Mexico. It was depressing, but Sarah agreed to go. The auction barn was grim, a concrete building that smelled of manure, fear, and desperation. Horses stood in small pens, most thin, many injured, all with that dull look in their eyes that comes from neglect and hopelessness. Sarah felt sick. But then she saw her. In the corner pen stood a chestnut mare who looked like she'd given up on life entirely. She was painfully thin, every rib visible, hip bones protruding, coat dull and patchy. She had a white blaze down her face that was barely visible under layers of dirt, kind brown eyes that held deep sadness, and legs that trembled slightly as she stood. She couldn't have weighed more than 800 pounds when she should have been closer to 1,100. Old rope burns scarred her legs. Her hooves were overgrown and cracked. She had the high, refined head of a thoroughbred, the elegant lines that spoke of good breeding somewhere in her past. But that past was clearly long gone. The mare didn't even look up when people passed her pen. "Oh my God," Jessica whispered. "That poor thing." Sarah stood frozen, staring at the mare. And then something happened that Sarah would never be able to explain. The mare lifted her head and looked directly at Sarah. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Sarah saw something that no one else could see: potential. The auction started. One by one, horses were led into the ring. Most sold for a few $100s, meat prices. Some barely got $50. Sarah's stomach churned. When the chestnut mare was led in, she stumbled slightly, clearly weak. The auctioneer, a heavy-set man in his 50s with a weathered face, thinning brown hair, a prominent belly straining against his western shirt, and the rapid-fire speaking style of someone who'd done this for decades, barely glanced at her. Lot 47, chestnut mare, approximately 10 years old, no papers. Let's start at $50. Do I hear 50? Silence. Sarah's hands gripped the railing in front of her. 25? Do I hear $25? More silence. Kill buyers weren't even interested. She was too thin, wouldn't yield enough meat to be worth the transport costs. All right, folks. $1. $1 for this mare. Otherwise she's going to... $1. Sarah's voice rang out before she even realized she was speaking. Every head in the auction barn turned to look at her. Jessica's mouth fell open. The auctioneer looked surprised. Sold for $1 to the young lady in the back. Congratulations, ma'am. She's all yours. Outside the auction barn, standing next to her ancient Toyota, Sarah stared at the mare and realized the magnitude of what she'd just done. She lived in an apartment. She worked 3 jobs. She had $347 in her checking account. And she'd just bought a horse. A horse that needed immediate veterinary care, farrier work, feed, and boarding, none of which she could afford. Sarah, what were you thinking? Jessica asked, though her voice was more awed than critical. I don't know, Sarah admitted, her voice shaking. I couldn't let her go to slaughter. Did you see her eyes, Jess? Jessica nodded slowly. Okay, we'll figure this out. My cousin has a small farm about 40 minutes from here. Maybe he'll let you keep her there temporarily. The mare stood quietly, head down, as if she knew her fate was being decided yet again. Sarah walked over and gently touched the mare's neck. Under the dirt and neglect, she could feel the good bone structure, the solid build that spoke of athleticism. I'm going to call you Penny, Sarah said softly. Because that's about all you cost, and because I think you're going to be worth a lot more than anyone knows. Jessica's cousin, Tom Rodriguez, was a kind man in his 40s with sun-weathered brown skin, salt and pepper hair under a worn baseball cap, a stocky muscular build from farm work, warm brown eyes, and a full beard. He took one look at Penny and shook his head. Sarah, I'll be straight with you. I don't think she's gonna make it. That mare's been neglected for a long time. But he let Sarah keep Penny in his back pasture anyway. Sarah's veterinarian, Dr. Amanda Foster, was less pessimistic. Amanda was in her 50s, with short gray hair, a weathered face with smile lines, sharp blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and a no-nonsense manner that hid a soft heart. She examined Penny thoroughly. Severe malnutrition, parasites, possible ulcers, neglected hooves, rope burns that are infected. She's in bad shape, Sarah. But her vitals are stable. If you can commit to her care, and I mean really commit, she's got a fighting chance. Sarah worked overtime shifts. She skipped meals to afford Penny's feed and medication. Every morning before her first job and every evening after her last, she drove to Tom's farm to care for Penny. Slowly, incredibly slowly, things started to change. Week by week, Penny changed. The dull coat began to shine. The ribs became less visible. The sadness in her eyes started to lift. Sarah spent hours just sitting in the pasture with her, talking to her, building trust. Penny had clearly been abused. She flinched at sudden movements and trembled when anyone raised their voice. But with Sarah, she began to relax. After 6 weeks, Sarah attempted to put a saddle on Penny's back for the first time. Her hands shook as she lifted it. Would Penny panic? Bolt. The mare stood perfectly still, turning her head to watch Sarah with those intelligent brown eyes. Sarah's breath caught. You've been trained, haven't you? She whispered. Someone taught you well before whatever happened to you. She mounted carefully. Penny stood rock solid. Sarah asked her to walk. Penny moved forward with a smoothness that took Sarah's breath away. Under all that neglect had been a trained horse, and not just trained, but trained well. Sarah began to wonder about Penny's past. Where had she come from? What had happened to her? Sarah became obsessed with finding out about Penny's history. She posted photos in online horse groups, asking if anyone recognized her. 4 weeks. Nothing. Then one evening, her phone rang. Is this Sarah Chen? The one looking for information about a chestnut mare with a white blaze. The voice belonged to Margaret Winters, an elderly woman in her 70s. Margaret had wispy white hair, a thin face lined with age, pale blue eyes, a frail build, and a voice that trembled with emotion. "That's my granddaughter's horse. Or she was, 5 years ago. Her name was Penelope's Dream. She was a show jumper. Won ribbons at every level. My granddaughter, Emily, trained her from a yearling. They were going to compete nationally. Then Emily was diagnosed with leukemia." Sarah's heart sank. Emily spent 2 years fighting. "We had to sell everything to pay for treatment. Penelope went to a trainer who promised to care for her. But after Emily died, I tried to find her and the trainer had sold her. She went through 3 owners in 2 years. Each one cared less than the last. I've been searching for her ever since." Sarah arranged for Margaret to visit. When the elderly woman arrived at Tom's farm, supported by a cane, and saw Penny grazing in the pasture, she burst into tears. "Oh, Penelope," she whispered. "What did they do to you?" Penny's head shot up at the sound of Margaret's voice. She whinnied, the first sound Sarah had ever heard her make, and trotted over to the fence. Margaret reached through with trembling hands, and Penny pressed her face against them. They stood like that for long minutes, both reunited with a piece of Emily. "She remembers," Margaret said, crying. "After everything, she remembers." Margaret told Sarah everything about Penny's training, her capabilities, her quirks. Emily trained her in show jumping, dressage, and cross-country. She was talented in all 3, what they call an eventer. She has the heart, the intelligence, and the athletic ability to compete at the highest levels. That's what Emily believed. Margaret grasped Sarah's hands. "Please, promise me you'll give her the life Emily wanted for her. Let her compete. Let her show the world what she can do. Let Emily's dream live through her." That night, Sarah made a decision that terrified her. She would train Penny for competition. She had no money, no connections, no sponsors. She didn't even have proper equipment. But she had something more valuable. She had a gift for reading horses, years of experience, and now she had purpose. She quit 2 of her 3 jobs, keeping only the stable hand position that at least kept her around horses. She moved out of her apartment and into a tiny room above Tom's barn that he offered her rent-free. She sold everything she owned that wasn't essential. Every spare dollar went into Penny's training. She designed her own training program, studying videos of top eventers, reading everything she could find. Every morning at 5 a.m., she and Penny began work. They started with the basics, rebuilding Penny's strength, confidence, and trust. Sarah built jumps out of scrap wood. She marked out dressage letters using paint on rocks. Her arena was a cleared section of Tom's pasture. It wasn't professional. It wasn't pretty. But it was theirs. 8 months after buying Penny for $1, Sarah entered their first competition, a small local event with a $25 entry fee. She borrowed a horse trailer from the stable where she worked. She cleaned and polished Penny until the mare gleamed. Her tack was old and mismatched, held together with duct tape in places. Sarah wore her only pair of riding boots, which had been resold 3 times, and borrowed breeches from Jessica. When they arrived at the competition grounds, Sarah felt completely out of place. Other competitors had expensive trailers, professional gear, and horses that probably cost more than Sarah would earn in 10 years. A tall woman in her 40s with highlighted blonde hair in a sleek bun, a thin athletic build, sharp features, cold blue eyes, designer riding clothes, and an air of superiority approached. This was Victoria Hampton, a well-known competitor. "Is that horse even sound?" Victoria asked, her voice dripping with disdain, gesturing at Penny. "She looks like she came from a rescue." "She did," Sarah said quietly. Victoria laughed. "Well, good luck with that." She walked away, and Sarah heard her say to another rider, "Why do they even let people like that enter?" Sarah and Penny's dressage test was rough. Penny was nervous in the new environment, and Sarah's hands shook. They scored poorly. Cross-country was better. Penny seemed to come alive on the course, her natural athleticism shining through. They had a few time penalties but finished clean. Then came show jumping. Sarah entered the ring with her heart pounding. This was what Penny had been trained for as a young horse. This was where she'd once excelled. Sarah could feel the mare's energy, her focus. The buzzer sounded. They began. Penny cleared the first jump beautifully, then the second, the third. With each obstacle, she seemed to grow more confident, more fluid. Sarah barely had to guide her. Penny knew what to do, remembered her training from years ago. The crowd began to notice. This wasn't just a rescued horse. This was a talented athlete. They cleared the combination, the triple bar, the difficult corner fence. The final oxer approached. Sarah didn't hesitate. Neither did Penny. They soared over it with room to spare. Clear round. 0 faults. The crowd erupted in applause. Someone in the crowd had filmed their round and posted it on social media with the caption, "This horse was bought for $1 at a slaughter auction 8 months ago. Watch what she can do now." By the next morning, the video had 100,000 views. By that evening, it had 1 million. Comments flooded in. "This made me cry." That's what second chances look like. The horse never forgot her training. News outlets picked up the story. Sarah's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Interview requests. Sponsorship offers. Messages from trainers, competitors, and horse lovers around the world. A professional eventing coach named Robert Sterling reached out. Robert was in his late 50s, with silver hair, a kind weathered face, thoughtful gray eyes, a tall lean build, and a reputation as one of the best coaches in the country. "Sarah, I've watched your video a dozen times. That mare has exceptional talent. And you have great instincts. I'd like to offer you something. Come train at my facility in Virginia. Full board for Penny, access to professional trainers, competition coaching. I'll waive all fees. I believe you two could compete at national levels." Sarah and Penny moved to Robert Sterling's prestigious eventing center. For the first time, they had access to professional facilities, expert coaching, and proper equipment. But Sarah never forgot where they came from. She kept a photo in her tack box. Penny at the auction, thin and hopeless. It reminded her why they were doing this. Over the next 2 years, Sarah and Penny climbed through the competition levels. They won regionals. They placed at nationals. They qualified for international events. Penny was now valued at over $1 million by some estimates, with multiple offers to buy her. Sarah turned them all down. "She's not for sale," she always said. "She never will be." They attracted sponsors who covered their expenses. Sarah started a non-profit to rescue auction horses and retrain them for competition, proving that horses other people threw away could excel at the highest levels. She called it Emily's Dream Foundation, honoring the girl who first saw Penny's potential. The ultimate test came at the National Eventing Championships. Sarah and Penny competed against the country's top riders, professionals with decades of experience and horses worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Victoria Hampton was there too, on a new horse that had cost her owners $300,000. Before the competition, Victoria approached Sarah. Her expression had changed. The arrogance was gone. "I owe you an apology," Victoria said quietly. "What I said at your first competition was cruel and wrong. What you've done with that mare, it's extraordinary. You've shown all of us what horses are truly capable of when someone believes in them." Sarah nodded, accepting the apology graciously. The competition was fierce. After 3 days of dressage, cross-country, and show jumping, the final standings were announced. Third place went to a rider from California. Second place went to Victoria Hampton. And first place, the national champion, was Sarah Chen and Penelope's Dream. The $1 horse and her owner who'd risked everything stood at the top of the podium. Margaret Winters was in the crowd, crying and clapping. Somewhere, Sarah knew, Emily was smiling too. Today, Sarah Chen runs Emily's Dream Foundation full-time, rescuing horses from auctions and training them for competition. She's saved over 200 horses and proven that dozens of them can compete successfully. Penny is now 15 years old, semi-retired, and lives like the champion she is. Sarah still rides her every day, though now it's leisurely trail rides instead of competition prep. When people ask Sarah about her success, she always says the same thing: "I didn't save Penny. She saved me. She taught me that potential exists in the most unexpected places, that second chances can change everything, and that sometimes the best investments aren't measured in dollars, they're measured in belief." The $1 horse taught the world a $1 million lesson. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more interesting horse stories.